Hey, book lovers. My name is Em, and I want to talk about books. And cats. Hey, book lovers. So, has anyone else noticed that this year is just flying by? It's been a big one for me, and I know that a lot of people have been going through some major changes this year. Anyway, it's just kind of wild to me that we are so close to the end of 2021. I'm getting together my best reads of the year, and I've decided which book I'm going to share next on Storytime with Em, which will be back in January. In honor of starting the new year and the many fad diets that pop up around this time, I'm going to be sharing my dystopian fitness novel, Super Gym. In a world of fatties and trainers, the goal is quite simple: lose weight or die trying. It's a good one. This next one is not a young adult book, however, there are definitely adult themes and situations, so just keep that in mind. I am definitely interested to step back into that world. It's been almost a decade since I wrote the first draft. I wrote Super Gym at a very turbulent time in my life, a time of major changes. And now here I am again. Anyway, that is coming up in the new year. Today, I want to talk about a really excellent book, American Dirt by Jeanine Cummins. So I ordered this book a long time ago, and it's just been sitting on my to-read shelf forever. It was on Oprah's book club, which I'm not a huge fan of Oprah, but she has had some really excellent books on her book club list, so I usually will trust her endorsement on books. There's also a Stephen King endorsement on the back, as well as some other authors. And I just heard good things about it, although I wasn't 100% clear on what the plot was. Sometimes I just like to go into books not knowing what to expect. And I especially had no idea because it had been sitting on my shelf for so long, and I didn't even bother to read the little book jacket blurb. I figured I'd just dive in and see what happened. I needed something completely different, and this book was perfect. It starts out real rough with the murder of an entire family during a quinceañera. Only 2 people survive, a young boy and his mom, who were in the bathroom at the time of the attack and managed to hide until the shooters were gone. So that's how it starts, and I was hooked immediately. The young boy's name is Luca, and his mom is Lydia. His father was a journalist in Acapulco, Mexico, and he wrote a deep dive article on the new jefe of the cartel, Javier. And this is the reason their entire family is now dead. The family was killed in a surprisingly clean and kind way, quick and unsuspecting. This new jefe is known for his creative and drawn-out killings. He likes to send a message, and their family has had it somewhat easy. And that's because there's one more wrinkle. Lydia. Lydia owned a bookstore, and she had a regular customer who had become her close friend. In fact, he had fallen in love with her, though she made it very clear that she was happily married. Can we guess who that customer was? It's the jefe himself, Javier. Luca and Lydia are incredibly lucky to survive the attack and to not be found afterward. But that's kind of where the luck runs out. They are immediately on the run. Lydia has some money, and she knows that they need to go to El Norte, the north. They need to escape to the United States because basically Javier's not going to stop until they're gone, and the cartel basically has control of the entire country. He's got a very far reach. So all she can think is get to the United States, start a new life. She doesn't really have a plan beyond that. She has a distant relation in Denver. That's only kind of a vague idea, but it's a plan for the moment. First, they have to escape Mexico alive. What follows is a complex tale of a woman thrown into turmoil. She goes from living a very comfortable life to suddenly being a homeless migrant And the journey north is suddenly necessary, but something that has never been a consideration before. She has lost everything: her family, her former life, her business, her identity. And now her main focus is solely escape and survival. She needs to keep Luca alive. The perils are great, and it is a dangerous trip that is taken by many and not survived by all. They meet all kinds of people along the way: the good, the bad, the broken, the kind. This is a beautiful and enthralling story of what drives people to cross the border illegally. The reasons are as varied as the people, and there's also this looming constant threat of death from the cartels. It is such an engaging story. I don't want to give away any more plot points for this one. Just read this book. It is so fabulous. It's moving and inspiring and frightening and just absorbing. Please check out American Dirt by Jeanine Cummins. It is so fabulous. It is exactly what I needed this week. A strong female mom character just giving it all to save her kid, and then you mix in the cartel. That's like perfect. Anyway, now it is time for a break, and then I've got a Christmas Kitty update and the newest chapter of my weekly writing project, Heart of the Storm. Be right back. Welcome back, book lovers. So, a quick update on the Christmas Kitty. The kids had started calling the cat Smokey because he's kind of a grayish black like fluff ball. He was showing up for food for a few days, but he was still very skittish. My other animals didn't seem so much defensive as just concerned that there was another animal outside. But Smokey has moved on to, who knows, somewhere else. He ate for a few days and then just kind of took off. And that happens a lot too. We have cats that just kind of come out of the cornfield, find the house full of suckers, eat food for a few days, and then they move on. And Smokey definitely seemed like he was more that type of cat. Like, he seems like he's been out kind of living on his own, doing his own thing for a while. He didn't seem like a newborn kitten. The little newborn kitten ones tend to stick around because they have no survival skills. So, no Christmas Kitty so far. That's probably for the best. I hope Smokey's doing okay wherever he went. But at least he had a full belly. So, before I get to the next chapter of Heart of the Storm, I have a couple quotes of the week. And I was just kind of thinking about, like, just having a good heart. This time of year tends to bring out the best in people, or the worst, but mostly the best. There's just that feeling of goodness this time of year. And so I looked up quotes about having a good heart. I don't know, they kind of cover both ends of the spectrum, I guess. The first one is from R.H. Sin. The only downfall of having a good heart is that you're constantly looking for angels inside of demons, and they wonder why the good know so much pain. Which, unfortunately, is true. And then the second one is from Nelson Mandela. A good head and a good heart are always a formidable combination. I really like that one. Anyway, now it is time for a new chapter of Heart of the Storm. Straight from my brain to you with no editing. The editing for this is going to be insane. We're getting close to the end, and I'm starting to think about the editing process because I would eventually like to edit this down into a book. But the difference between a first draft and a finalized book is huge. And right now, I've got 35 chapters so far of a first draft. Anyway, I hope you enjoy this new chapter of Heart of the Storm. Harper's wheels skimmed over the earth, and the lawn was a green blur as it passed. She left the mansion behind and rattled down the road into the village. A thick haze of smoke and fog hung heavily over the land beyond the gates of the mansion's long driveway. Harper dove in blindly, but found with surprise that she could see through the haze, though the village dwellers she encountered didn't seem to notice her at all. Harper slowed down and rolled to a stop at the broken front window of her old gym. The memories of her training and the smooth, satisfying feeling of movement tore at her. She could barely move now. Her limbs were stiff and wooden. She would never know that fluidity again. Her wheels crunched through the glass as she moved on toward the old store. The hill wasn't much of a struggle, and she found the front of the store had been transformed. Someone had built a concrete ramp up to the front door. The door was now glass, and it slid open as she approached. A bell jingled somewhere in the back of the store. The interior had changed as well. Wide, white-tiled aisles glowed under bright fluorescent lights. Soft music played throughout the store. It was filled with racks of clothing, each one bearing clothes of a different color. Harper rolled to a nearby rack of yellow. She gently touched the sleeve of a soft sweater that was the color of a pale yellow wildflower that grew in the valley. Harper's favorite. "See something you like?" asked a soft, feminine voice behind her. She wheeled around and met the gaze of a pair of large violet eyes. The young woman had pale purple hair and wore it piled on top of her head in two messy buns. Her clothes were varying shades of purple. Harper tried to speak, but her voice got caught in her throat. The woman smiled kindly and took the sweater from her hands. Harper stared in amazement at her hands. They were free and once again made of flesh. The skin was soft and oddly smooth. "This would look beautiful on you," the young woman said. She never broke eye contact with Harper, and the girl felt a bead of sweat running down her spine. She could feel her spine. Harper looked away first. Her cheeks burned and she was flooded with embarrassment and confusion. "I don't understand," she managed to say. "It's okay," the girl said as she laid the sweater over Harper's torso. "You don't need to understand everything, you know. It's sometimes better to just let go and see what happens. That looks nice on you." Harper looked down in astonishment. She now wore the sweater. She could feel its softness. She could feel it. The purple girl had moved further into the store and was examining a rack of necklaces with a focused look of intensity. Harper rolled forward cautiously. "This one," the girl said decisively. She selected a delicate gold chain which bore a messy knot of metal pieces shaped into a star. She laid a hand on Harper's forehead and gently tipped her head back. She placed the necklace across Harper's exposed throat. When she stepped back, Harper reached up to her throat and felt the necklace that she now wore. A jagged edge snagged her finger and cut her. A single drop of blood formed, and Harper stared at it. Interesting. The girl was smiling. When Harper looked back to her injured finger, the skin was smooth and perfect. The bright red drop of blood had vanished. "Who are you?" Harper's voice was louder than she'd expected, and the sound startled her. Purple Girl just kept smiling. "Interesting question," she said. She leaned on a counter covered in jars of every hue. "My name is Allie. This is my store. Lottie gave it to me." She nodded at Harper's reaction. "It was delivered to my door. A big silver envelope that contained a letter from Lottie, a death certificate for her, and a book of instructions." She tapped her glittery purple nails against the countertop, and the jars rattled musically. Her smile was sad. "She tried to prepare me for this, but I clung to the idea of her immortality. It turns out that sometimes the thing you've always believed can end up not being true. That one thing has been a lie for your entire life. Makes you question everything, you know?" Harper nodded quietly and motioned for Allie to continue. The girl shook her head and her gaze returned. She was back from wherever she had just gone. A painful memory. Anyway, she left instructions for taking the store in a new direction. More focused on healing, you know? That's my specialty. Lottie always directed my lessons toward healing. I'm glad she did. She fell silent again, lost in another thought. Harper felt panic strike her heart, and she suddenly wondered if this was a safe place to hide. She had come here without thinking, just looking to go back, maybe somehow start over. "You can start over, in a way," the girl replied. She could read thoughts, apparently. Not in the way you wish. You will never be free of that. She nodded to Harper's wheeled lower half. Some things are beyond my power. I am not of god blood. Just a normal witch. Valley magic, you know? Harper smiled. Lottie took you in. Allie nodded. When I was very young. She never treated me like I was less. She taught me as much as she could. She sighed. I have seen no proof of her death, but something tells me she is gone. I feel her absence, you know? Harper's newly healed fingers toyed with the hem of her pale yellow sweater. She didn't want to feel it, but she could. Each death brought a new weight to her soul. Her family was shrinking. Allie took down her long lavender hair and ran her fingers through it, pulling at the tangles. She wove it into a thick braid and wrapped it around her head. Okay, enough moping. Nothing we can do but continue on, you know? Lottie left special instructions about you. This is what I've been preparing for. Come to the back. I've got a room ready for you. You should rest while you can. There's not much time. Harper followed her to the back of the store through a curtained doorway. She moved slowly down a wide, bright white hallway. Allie waited at the end. She laid her hand on the wall, and it shimmered and faded away. She motioned for Harper to go through. On the other side was a spacious room with pale yellow walls and polished wooden floors. She rolled to the wide window and took in the view. The valley lay below her. Somehow she was now incredibly high up, and she could see through the blanket of smoke and fog. The valley was strangely empty under the cloud. Not a single thing moved in the haze. "What do I do now?" she asked. But when Harper wheeled around, she was alone in the room. Nim slowly came back to consciousness. Her head pounded painfully. She tried to raise a hand to massage her temples, but her arm resisted. "So you're back," said a voice. Nim suddenly remembered. "We are immortal, remember?" Rhea sneered at her. "Why do we have to be together? Why me? You've never liked me. You want to be bonded for eternity." Rhea wrinkled her nose. "You're right. This is definitely not my ideal, but I needed your powers. There were only two options. And being stuck to me is the better option." Rhea gave her a disbelieving look. "Would you rather I had let you die?" Nim laughed. "We're immortal, remember?" she said in a mocking tone. "You can't kill me." Rhea smiled a little and looked away. "Right," she said softly. "I forgot." The room suddenly shook. The rock around them began to shift and crack. Pieces crumbled and fell. The sound was deafening. "What's happening?" Nim screamed over the falling rocks as they dashed to the edge of the cavern. Rhea was in charge of their body, and she pressed up tight against the wall. She inched along, pounding the wall with her fist. "Where are you?" she yelled. Nim was confused. "I'm right here." "Not you," she said, rolling her eyes even in their dilemma. "Where are you?" she called again. There was a sudden flash of purple glittery light to their right. Rhea hurried to the area of the wall that shimmered with dark purple stone. Their arms came up and covered their heads as they dove through the stone and rolled across a splintery wooden floor. Nim's face hit the floor, and blood made her cheeks sticky. When they sat up, she lifted a hand to her face, and the fingers came back red. Rhea forced the hand down and slapped Nim with the other one. "Get over it. Heal it. You know how. Stop feeling sorry for yourself. Accept the situation. We have to if we're going to survive." Nim took a deep breath. "Fine. I have a feeling I don't entirely know what's going on. I think Ma's kept things from me." Rhea laughed bitterly. "Ma's never told anyone the complete story, nor the truth most of the time. She has warped so many stories I no longer know what to believe. I can't sort out what is true and what is creation. And if she has convinced enough of us that it is true, is it still false? What? Nim couldn't entirely keep up. Rhea looked disappointed. Never mind, she sighed. Here's what I know. Thea has an army of undead. She has drained their powers, and she is beyond anything we could imagine. She's going to win, Nim. We are going to be on the right side of this thing. We don't owe our cousins anything. It's all about survival now. Rhea had them running down a narrow hallway. The walls were dirty, cracked plaster, and where there once were doors, large sheets of plywood were hung up to block off access to the rooms. The floor squished a little underfoot. It was covered in some kind of mud or slime. Its dark, wet scent seemed to line their lungs, and it made it harder to breathe. What if we joined our cousins? Combined, we must be stronger than her. Nim panted from the effort of her body, but her mind was clear. She didn't want to join her aunt. That couldn't have been Maz's plan for them. Maz had hated their siblings, and Thea most of all. Rhea knew Nim's thoughts and shook her head. She slowed their pace just a little. Maz has been working with Thea this entire time. They betrayed us all. But it's too late now. Thea has all the power. She would have ours as well, if Maz had not prepared me for their death. This is exactly what Maz had planned for us. Nim didn't respond. She worked to keep her thoughts neutral and bland. Rhea held all the power in their duo, and she was just along for the ride. She didn't really care what side she was on. Rhea slipped through another sparkling wall, and they were suddenly in a lavish bedroom, decorated with thick furs. The walls were a lush, mossy green, and a marble fountain gurgled in one corner. Not so bad, huh? Rhea said as they spun in a circle in the middle of the room. It's fine, Nim replied with disinterest. The fountain's okay. Rhea rolled her eyes. You're just determined to hate this, aren't you? Nim shrugged in her mind, but the body did not respond. Rhea smirked. I do hate this. I had no say in any of it. I'm just here. Be glad for that, Rhea snapped. You'll thank me eventually. As Nim started to reply, the door at the far end of the room opened with a creak. A tall, thin phantom slipped into the room. Her long gray hair hung in tangles around her lean face. She was unnaturally tall and had to stoop to enter. She snickered and gave a gasping, wheezing laugh. 2 for 1, huh? Interesting choice. Rhea tensed up. Nim was alert now. The terrifying woman seemed somehow familiar. Let's see, the hideous woman hissed. I don't recognize you two, but it's in your blood. You're part of the family. She moved closer. Her gait was stilted, and she moved in fits and starts. She held her thin, long-fingered hands clasped at her chest and leaned toward them. She seemed to be sniffing them. Someone hasn't been honest with me. I thought I knew all of the children, but I don't know you. Her eyes were dark, but small embers smoldered in the depths of her gaze. They blazed with her anger. She moved in close to them and looked each one in the eye for a long time. She paused on Nim and then gasped. The river dwellers? She hissed. I thought you were all long gone. Her ghastly face grimaced. Her attempt at a smile, Nim thought. She swung her bulbous head back and forth in horribly slow arcs. This is a turn, she muttered. This is a turn. I thought I was wrong, but that means I'm right about you, too. She was staring at Rhea now. She extended a long, bony arm and touched the tip of Rhea's nose with one disgusting claw. A tiny scratch. A single drop of blood. The ghastly woman collected the blood in her nail and brought it up to her nose. She sniffed up the blood with one quick motion, and a wide smile pulled at her thin, brittle skin. I knew it. Moz is true, child. Those annoying little things were only a distraction. I knew Moz's daughter would have to be the most incredible of them all. And look at you. The woman's praise was uncomfortable, and Nim felt Rhea's nerves as well as her own. Why this, though? That's what I wonder. The woman was looking at Nim now. Why let this one live? You are weaker for it. 2 heads. Split personas. Your heart is too soft. You have chosen wrong, daughter. Rhea went rigid. Every muscle was tensed and ready to fight. She wanted to hit this woman. She looked brittle, like she could turn to dust under Rhea's fists. I am not your daughter. You may not know me, but I know you, Mina. It was always vanity magic for you. What happened? You look dreadful. The sound Mina made was an unearthly assault on their ears, but they held firm as she attacked. Rhea held up her hand and spoke one word, and Mina collided with an invisible wall and dropped to the floor. Is she dead? Nim asked. I think she's been dead for a while. Mina groaned and rolled over. She was breathing, and while they watched, she began to snore. She's fine, Rhea said. She nudged the woman with the toe of her boot. They stepped over the sleeping wraith and left the room. And that is the end of Chapter 35 of Heart of the Storm. I hope you're still enjoying, book lovers. We are getting so close to the end. I'm very excited about it. And I will be back next week with a new chapter, as well as some other books to talk about. Thank you so much for listening. I hope you're enjoying this holiday season. And if you're having a hard time, just know that I'm thinking of you, and I care about you. Until next time, book lovers, keep reading.